It's the week ending Friday the 8th of August, and this is The Week Unwrapped. In the past 7 days, we've seen deadly wildfires raging across southern France, Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs taking effect across multiple countries, and the controversial airing of MasterChef on BBC One even after the sacking of the two hosts. You can read all you need to know about everything that matters in The Week magazine, but we're here to bring you some stories that passed under the radar this week. Big news, not making headlines right now, but with repercussions for all our lives. I'm Arian McNichol. Let's unwrap the week. And with Olly away, joining me today from the Week's digital team, it's Jamie Timson and Harriet Marsden. And from the Week Junior, it's senior editor Felicity Capon. And in other important news this week, guys, Tesco has launched the birthday cake sandwich. What's your instant take on the rise of these, let's call them what they are, novelty sandwiches?
I don't understand it. Humanity peaked with the ham and cheese. Like, we didn't need to try and go beyond that.
I think it's all about the crisp sandwich. You can't get better than a crisp sandwich. You've got to stay savoury.
Okay, Harriet, you're up first. What do you think this week should be remembered for?
Is Argentina going off the deep end?
Live right now, Lance 60.1 Mar del Plata Canyon. We're looking at some sort of a robotic arm that is obviously underwater. Harriet, what is this? What are we watching?
So this is it's the live stream of a research submarine that's on this deep sea expedition just off the coast of Buenos Aires, which is exploring the Mar del Plata Canyon for the first time. It's this submarine gorge that's nearly 4,000 meters underwater. And this research sub is showing these amazing coral and fish that have never been seen before, with the scientists giving live commentary. And this video stream was only meant to be for marine biologists, but it's actually become this massive internet sensation. It's attracted more than 1.6 million views a day on YouTube, and it's all over TV news broadcasts in Argentina. So it's just an astonishingly huge surprise hit.
Yeah, it's had Argentinians completely hooked. What kinds of things are they seeing that's making them so interested?
One of the things that's been the most popular is this orange starfish, which was really brightly coloured. So people were comparing it to Patrick in SpongeBob SquarePants. And there was a sea cucumber that people have nicknamed the sweet potato, a crab that kind of looked like a hairy spider. And there's been social media quizzes like, which deep sea creature are you based on how you handle stress? So apparently if you ignore the world, you're the translucent squid. And if you explode with anger, you're the pistol shrimp. So this is a big internet sensation.
So we've got translucent squid and pistol, what were they? Pistol something or other?
Pistol shrimps.
Pistol shrimp. Are they unique to this part of the ocean, Jamie? Why are the scientists focusing on this exact patch?
So the National Scientific and Technical Research Council, which is CONICET, launched the expedition of the depths of the Mar del Plata in collaboration with the Schmidt Ocean Institute. The objective of the dive is to explore the underwater region of high biodiversity where little knowledge exists up until now. More than 30 researchers from the government agency are participating in the expedition, where depths of over 3,000 meters are being explored for samples and high quality imaging of the area. They're sending kind of robotic vehicles down, obviously taking some really impressive imagery, as they were saying, but it's kind of looking at a part of the world that's underexplored, but also Argentina, or kind of the Argentinian science community, are very keen to show their worth at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, that you've got this unlikely kind of breakaway success of a live stream that, after all, is kind of showing fairly nerdy underwater action, but it seems to have captured people's imagination. Is that, Felicity, because of what Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, is doing in terms of his approach to science in the country?
I think it certainly puts a lot of attention onto Milei and his cuts and the fact that he's targeted Argentina's public science institutions. But I think it was still a kind of weird runaway success, first and foremost, that has now sort of turned political. And I really, really like that because I think when you watch it, it's actually very, very therapeutic and calming and quiet. And with so many, I just love that in a world of so many endless distractions and high production this and high production that, it's like these tiny little creatures just going about their little lives. And I just think it's a really nice story that has captured the attention of so many. But on the political side, it's interesting because it has obviously rabid lots of people. There are protests planned, protests that have already happened against Javier Milei, particularly because he sees himself as a climate change denier. And I thought it was quite ironic, actually. He sort of sees public science institutions as completely unnecessary. And in a 2024 speech, he said, if you think your research is so useful, go to the market like any other citizen, publish a book and see if people are interested. And that's what's so funny about this live stream. People are interested. And, you know, a lot of Argentinians also see it as a source of national pride. This is happening off the coast of Buenos Aires. They're loving what these scientists are doing. They're loving what they found off the coast of their country. And it slightly suggests that Milei is a bit out of touch, actually, as to how much people do care about science and the natural environment.
On the other hand, Harriet, Argentina does have serious financial problems. Is funding this kind of science just too expensive for a country in the current predicament it's in?
It's an interesting question because the so-called scienticide, so Javier Milei effectively taking a chainsaw to publicly funded science research, is part of his broader austerity measures, which are can be summarized as slashing federal public spending, focusing on privatization and deregulation to kind of incentivize competitive market activity. And in that sense, he's removed tens of thousands of civil service jobs and made these widespread drastic cuts to social spending and public works, alongside the fact that Cornet's budget was cut 21% in real terms last year, salaries losing 35% of their value, and thousands of jobs in state-funded science and tech organizations lost since Milei came into power, which is about a year and a half ago. But it is true that Argentina's economy actually surged sort of nearly 8% in April, compared with April last year. And it's the fastest GDP growth in the country since 2022. Inflation, which we've discussed on this podcast before, the Argentinian inflation rate is absolutely chronic and horrendous in the world, but it was 44% over the past 12 months and is now projected to go down to just under 30%. So on the one hand, these austerity measures are having a fiscal effect. On the other, they are massively affecting the poorest people of Argentina. They've tipped millions of people into poverty last year. Unemployment is up. Prices are up 40% year on year. And the group that's demonstrating the most every week, which is pensioners, are the hardest hit group. And Argentina is still, despite its massive bailout from the IMF, it's still locked out of foreign currency issuance. It still owes the IMF nearly $60 billion. So it's a complicated picture here. I think it really will all come down to how Milei does in the midterms in October.
Yeah, I mean, Jamie, is this a kind of, Felicity described it as therapeutic. Is this a kind of escapism for people who are living through a pretty, god-awful period of the country's financial history?
Yeah, I think it's also really worth thinking about how important visual media is as a kind of turning point in scientific awareness and advocacy. We've seen kind of through history, like NASA's Blue Marble photo, which was taken during Apollo 17 in 1972, gave people a kind of new sense of the Earth's fragility, and a lot of people have credited it as kind of galvanizing the modern environmental movement. More recently, we've obviously seen things like Blue Planet and the David Attenborough documentaries that really do lead to kind of real policy change. Blue Planet, particularly with like scenes of plastic in the ocean and things like that we've talked about before on this program about whether or not people are able to make real change in that area, but they are galvanized by visual media. It is interesting because most of the time, I think people think of science as being quite statistics heavy and data heavy, but actually maybe the things that move the dial are kind of empathy, urgency, imagination, and that is kind of encapsulated in this live stream. And so kind of looking forward, whether we need to do more of this stuff in terms of like storytelling when we're thinking of advocacy for the environment.
Yeah, storytelling does seem right, doesn't it, Felicity? I mean, does this way of capturing people's attention with the kind of science that it turns out they want to see, does this speak to the power of visual media, video and TV and so on, and social media to get people to connect more deeply with the environment and nature and care about science and research a bit more?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, as Jamie was saying, like the two sort of need to work in tandem. The idea of scientists as being sort of like musty and boring and hard to get into just clearly isn't the case. And the more that you can make it visually exciting and stimulating, the better. But you clearly don't have to do that much, as this live stream shows, which is quite gratifying in a way. I mean, I live in Folkestone, a coastal town, and they have a live stream. When there's a storm, they have a live stream of the harbour, and you get loads and loads of people in Folkestone who just tune in to watch these big waves buffeting the harbour for like hours. And there was also a very popular live stream of a nesting osprey that people got obsessed with, seeing when it would have its babies and just watching it, and nothing would really happen for a long time. And then it did, and it was amazing. So it's heartwarming that people still have that connection to nature and the natural world, and particularly because this, to me, it almost seemed like going into outer space. It's one of the few places on the planet that we still don't know very much about. So there's that intrigue and that fascination with these unknown environments.
Well, definitely. And obviously, these deep sea creatures are a source of fascination and like sort of intrigue and interest. But there's also the potential for them to be worth serious money, right? We've spoken in the past on this podcast about how there's a potential gold mine in terms of what new deep sea creatures can contribute in terms of their potential application to medicine and cosmetics and so on. Is canning projects like these, Harriet, kind of short-sighted given the riches that could come from exploring the deep?
I do think that it's incredibly short-sighted, because not only is there the potential for, as you said, all of these applications to be found in the deep sea environment, which it's so incredible because these submarine gorges like these ones that are thousands of meters under the sea, we know almost nothing about them. We know more about, for example, the surface of the moon, people say, than we do about the deep sea environment. So you have no idea what you're going to find. And it's short-sighted also in the sense that if you can all these research projects and you defund all these scientific organizations, you are also sparking a brain drain of your scientists and your researchers who will leave the profession. And in Argentina, we're seeing that so many of the country's top scientists that are working on things like cancer cures, for example, are having to take second jobs or go into teaching and leave science and research altogether. So it's incredibly short-sighted, not just in the future, but also in the present, when you're sparking these national conversations and strikes and political dissent. And even though the Argentinian government over the past year and a half has been trying really hard to clamp down on the right to public protest, it is still happening. Okay, let's resurface from this one. On the way, it's more than just a game, the true cost of a failing football club. Okay, Felicity, it's your turn. What do you think this week should be remembered for?
Is this the week we found out that the shrimps are toast?
More shrimps.
I think I've come to my end. I can't see anything being sorted. I just think we're gonna be, by the end of this week, maybe, or by the 20th, we're going to be finished. What would your message be to Jason Whittingham, the owner?
I don't think it's suitable really for TV, but I would just tell him to find his pen and sign on the dotted line.
Now all those families, they've not been paid for 2 months. What are they going to do in the summer holidays?
Some Morecambe FC fans speaking to Sky News on Monday. Felicity, what are they frustrated about?
Yeah, that was a slightly glib tease because actually the story is really rather sad. Morecambe FC, a football club that's been in existence since 1920, is in dire straits, it's in complete crisis and could be forced to close. It's kind of complicated and murky as to why, but basically it's currently owned by Jason Whittingham, who's not a local. He put the club up for sale in 2022, but a deal has still not been done. There was a deal on the table with a London-based sports investment company called the Punjab Warriors, and they've been in talks to buy the Shrimps for over a year. But the deal just hasn't been accepted. No one really knows what's going on. There was further confusion when Whittingham started talking about a deal with a consortium owned by a guy called Johnny Cato, who no one's even sure if he exists. Some people have tried to look into this Cato figure. It's not quite sure who he is. And it's just basically, it's awful for the football club. It's awful for the town. This is a club that plays in the National League. They've been suspended, so they won't be able to play the first 3 games of their season. And it might mean that they could be formally expelled from the division if the club can't be saved.
And what does Jason Whittingham say about it all? Why is he silent, or have we heard from him on why he's not selling immediately to this group that obviously is interested?
He's basically silent. I mean, everything that I was looking at, people are trying to get hold of him and to find out what's going on. And you could hear from those fans saying, just sign it. I mean, there's speculation that he wants a better deal to get some more money out of it. Maybe he's having, financial issues of his own, but it's really not clear what's going on. But yeah, I mean, he himself, his past is a bit tricky, shall we say. He's been a director of 25 companies during his career. And of those 25 companies, 18 have been either dissolved, voluntary dissolved, put into administration, put into liquidation, or put into receiver action. And you see this with a lot of small local football clubs, that they are not run very well. There's mismanagement, finances are just dreadful, and the knock-on impact this is having is just awful, to the extent that the Prime Minister Keir Starmer even got involved this week. He's a big footy fan himself, obviously, and he's saying, something's got to be done about this.
Meanwhile, if the league does follow through, Harriet, and expel Morecambe, I mean, is this too strong a position to be taking, and is it punishing the club rather than the owner who, it seems like the club itself hasn't done anything wrong directly?
Well, the National League Committee is meeting at the end of August, and they're going to see if the outstanding debts are settled. But unless they're convinced that Morecambe has the financial means to complete the season, they're going to expel them from the division, which obviously is not just going to affect the football club. It's also going to affect the entirety of Morecambe. It's one of the area's biggest employers. I think that people shouldn't make the mistake of thinking this is just about a football club. This is about an entire community. The club also hosts fundraisers for the community. It does sessions for the elderly. They've got a pre and post cancer group that meet regularly. And in the winter months, which are obviously really tough for a seaside location like Morecambe, the football away fans come and they book hotels and they spend money in the pubs. So this is just such a massive economic story. It's not just about the football club. It has the potential to economically have an extraordinarily devastating impact on the whole community.
I mean, is the community in a position, Jamie, to do something about this and intervene themselves? I know Tyson Fury is one of their most famous fans and has flirted with the idea of buying out the club in the past. Is he in a position to step in? Could he work with the community to do something like that?
Yeah, it's interesting because, there's a wider question about football governance in general. There's been a lot of talk over recently about the football governance bill that the government is looking to bring in, but also about owners in general in football and how things like this can happen. I know from personal experience, I'm a Hearts fan, and we had our fair share of very dodgy owners in the past, one Lithuanian called Vladimir Romanov, and the excitement that he brought with his money into Scottish football was incredible, but it was literally not credible. And he quickly left. And now, thankfully, Hearts is fan owned. It's one of the few clubs in the country that is fan owned. So there is the potential for it. It does involve a lot of the community coming together. It does need money. You don't want to be in a situation where someone like Tyson Fury, I've absolutely no idea whether or not he would follow through on his claims, but you don't want to be in a situation where he stumps up the cash and then suddenly withdraws the money. Because let's be clear, when the Bond Group Investments, who are the people that own, that Whittingham is obviously in charge of, when they bought into Morecambe, look, Morecambe were in League One and were actually doing very well. So that's 2 divisions above where they are now. They started failing to pay players. They ended up getting relegated twice. You do need to have a vetting process to stop people like this coming in, because if Morecambe close, the debt that is owed, Whittingham will only pay a fraction of that, probably, because of the way that the bankruptcy works. And in that regard, it's a kind of, an easy win. He's come out and said that he wants to sell, and he's asking this Punjab Sports to get in touch with him. But ultimately, it feels like everyone is kind of passing the buck a bit.
But there is the fit and proper person test, isn't there, that's meant to prevent potentially problematic owners from seizing control of clubs. And yet, as you say, Hearts, Bury, Macclesfield, now Morecambe, it keeps happening. Felicity, what is it that needs to change to help prevent this in the future?
Yes, it's hard to say, really. I mean, there's a lot of excitement from some MPs like Lisa Nandy and other MPs up north who are very excited about the Football Governance Act and that this is going to bring independent regulatory powers to oversee it and to have tough new financial regulation to make sure clubs have long-term sustainable futures and stronger tests to stop rogue owners and all that sort of thing. But I mean, as you said, Arian, the EFL has an owners and directors test in place, and they had it in place when Bond Group Investments bought Morecambe, and Whittingham and his associates passed it. So it's hard to know whether Parliament's plans are actually going to work. And there was a comment piece in the Times that was actually quite scathing about it, because one of the things they're going to do is license clubs. But as the Times was pointing out, the licenses are not awarded to individuals, they're awarded to clubs. So it wouldn't be Whittingham who had lost his license, it would be Morecambe. And there's lots of other things that people are saying that are a problem. If it hadn't have been Whittingham who bought Morecambe, who else would have bought it? Like, a lot of these clubs are basically financial black holes that no one really wants. I mean, certainly it would be good to get them back into the hands of fans and locals if they can stab up the funds. But it's very, very expensive. I mean, there has been a trend recently, I guess, for American celebrities to come in and buy up clubs. So you've seen that with Wrexham, which was bought by Ryan Reynolds and the guy from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, whose name I'm passing on. And then I started watching Brady and the Blues last night, which is Tom Brady buying Birmingham, which is really a really fascinating watch. But, that's very, very wealthy Americans who also, come in and sometimes make, mistakes. The first episode is devoted to Tom Brady making some very, very bad mistakes. So, you need a lot of money, basically. I think that's the problem. And even then, not only do you need money, you need sort of long-term thinking and planning and it remains to be seen whether someone's going to come along and give that to Morecambe.
And presumably the solution can't just be very wealthy Americans sweeping in, because the broader issue, Harriet, is kind of the deprivation of coastal towns themselves. I mean, why is it that coastal towns, often associated with kind of leisure and escape, have become some of the most deprived places in the UK?
Well, a few years ago, I was given a grant by local trust to travel around to some of the most deprived areas of England and report on what was going on there. So that was a year-long fellowship. So I spent a lot of time in coastal communities like Mablethorpe and Skegness in Lincolnshire, at Plymouth, Withensea up near Hull, South Shields, Isle of Sheppey, Blackpool in particular. And there were a lot of the same stories. These places used to be beautiful, popular holiday resort destinations, and then came this boom in foreign travel to outside of the UK, compounded by a decline in coastal industry and economies like fishing, then the financial crisis, then they were hammered by austerity cuts. Blackpool had some of the worst in the country, for example. Then Brexit, so areas like Cornwall or the northeast from Newcastle down to Hull just got absolutely hammered by Brexit as well, and loss of EU subsidies and damage to fishing industries. And then COVID was kind of just a nail in the coffin, basically. But the big thing that they all had in common, all of them, was a decline in community infrastructure. So community centres had been defunded or shut down, pubs had closed, churches were closing, bus routes, in particular bus routes were closing, working clubs. So there was nowhere for communities to gather and meet, and isolation was just cited over and over again as a main cause of mental ill health, of community erosion. So in that sense, places like Morecambe, the football club, it just becomes this central meeting point where people create friendships and gather and have these interactions that are absolutely vital for mental and emotional well-being.
Is there, Jamie, a happy ending to be found here? Do you imagine there will be a rescue of the club, or do you think that we're watching the very last days of Morecambe FC?
I have hope that something will come through and that maybe he'll sign the deal and they'll be able to pay their wages and get back on the pitch. I think more generally, and if we're talking about what the government can do or maybe what the state can do, there's much more that can be done to invest in local community clubs, in making things easier. I used to live near Dulwich Hamlet, and they were in a long battle over their ground with the council and with developers who wanted to turn their ground into flats. And there was, regularly like 3,000 people coming to watch Dulwich Hamlet play, who are in a lower division than Morecambe, because it was a community club that people were interested in. And the government and the council did very little to help them with their efforts to purchase the ground and to be able to stay where they were in southeast London. So I think if we see football clubs as being a hub, a community, there's a great article on the BBC Sport website, which I would recommend everyone reading, about the array of things that Morecambe FC does for the local community. And if we truly believe that is something that's worth preserving, then there does need to be more investment. And maybe it can't be directly in the football club, but it can certainly provide the support and the infrastructure to make it easier for them to survive.
Okay, another tale of survival up next. We did AI models last week. This week, we're talking about AI world models. Jamie, I'll come to you to explain the difference after this. Okay, Jamie, you're finishing the show. What do you think this week should be remembered for?
This week, we learnt why an AI for an AI could make the whole world blind.
Agent 3 reaches Artificial General Intelligence, the AGI landmark. This means the AI can carry out all intellectual tasks as well or better than humans. But in the scenario, OpenBrain's safety team is unsure if the AI is aligned to the company's ethics and goals. An uncomfortable gap is developing in understanding. The public are increasingly using AI for everything, but are blissfully unaware an AI now exists that's as smart as humans.
Is this how AI might destroy humanity? A cheery video from the BBC World Service on Saturday. Jamie, what's the story this week?
So this week, Google set out through its DeepMind AI division the next steps in developing artificial intelligence, which, as far as I can understand, this is layman stuff. Someone who is far more intelligent than me will be able to understand it. But they are basically creating a new kind of world model, and it's called Genie 3, and it's a simulated environment that you can train AI agents like robots with realistic replicas of situations and environments. It's able to generate multiple minutes of interactive 3D environments, basically just from prompts. So we've all kind of seen what ChatGPT can do, I guess, is a good example. But you can say, I want to see, Terry Wogan back from the dead presenting, Saturday Night Live or something, and it will be able to produce that for you immediately and then change who was the guest or whatever. The kind of concept that makes it, or they say that makes it so interesting, is the memory that it has developed. So within the world, the AI will be able to tell if something is going to happen based on what it's created previously. The example that it gives is a human obviously knows if a glass of water is about to teeter over an edge, even though we haven't seen it happen. We know in our mind that could happen because of gravity. They say that this is kind of how AI would learn that might happen without it actually having to happen. What they say that the whole purpose of Genie 3 is to create, or is that they will work towards artificial general intelligence, which is different to artificial superintelligence. We may get onto that in a second. Artificial general intelligence is basically a theoretical level of AI that means that AI can carry out tasks autonomously. It's kind of what's seen to be the way in which AI will steal your job, Aaron.
Right. Okay, so maybe we'll park artificial general intelligence for just a moment. We'll come back to that. But Felicity, the idea of creating world models, one of the examples that I read was of creating a factory setting. As I understand it, what they're trying to do is allow AI to start operating in the real world. Is that what's going on here? So we'll have no longer will it be just a thing that we interact with on screen, but now suddenly AI will be able to operate in call centers or in factories or in places where work happens. Is that what the big breakthrough is all about?
I think so. I mean, as far as my understanding allows it, it's certainly this is being hailed as a next step in that direction. So this is a real breakthrough and a real advancement in terms of what AI would be able to do in the real world, hopefully for us. I still see it in terms of it still looks like a game to me. So I don't think my brain has quite wrapped itself around what's going on here, because it looks to me just like playing a video game or something. But it's incredible because when you look at the promos that they've put out, you're walking in these worlds, or you're in these worlds that keep on sort of making themselves up as you go along, and you can put in real-time prompts. Like in one, you're sort of walking down a canal, and then you could type in that a man in a chicken suit runs past you, and a man in a chicken suit starts running past you, and then a dragon lands on the water and all this kind of thing. But people are talking about it in terms of how it could be applied to school settings, and also how it could be used to imagine war zones. So there's also kind of quite a lot of useful ways that this could be employed to help us, learn about the world. And it's pretty mind-boggling stuff.
And it's a step, as Jamie was saying, Harriet, towards artificial general intelligence. Do you want to dig into that connection a bit more deeply?
Yeah, so basically what we've got at the moment that underpin bots like ChatGPT, for example, are large language models, and they're trained on massive amounts of data. So they're really good for stuff like planning, like you put in prompts and it gives you answers, but they can't really take action on a human's behalf in the physical world because they don't know how the physical world works, because you can't train something on data, because that's something that's, just in layman's terms, that's stuff that's already happened or facts that already exists. Whereas in these world models, if you get like robots or autonomous vehicles and you're training them in what are effectively these simulated environments, the idea is that down the line, a robot could actually work in a warehouse because it has learned to take action in a physical world. So that's kind of the difference. So you see why Google is saying that world models are a vital step on the way to achieving artificial general intelligence.
And meanwhile, actually, Google is being quite cautious, aren't they, Jamie, about saying what Genie 3 can and can't do? I mean, how far off is this tech from becoming reality?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. I remember reading 10 years ago now a blog called Wait But Why by a guy called Tim Urban, who kind of set out the whole concept of artificial general intelligence and then super intelligence, and how robots or AI could come to, as the BBC World Service didn't try and scare us with but how it could come to attack humanity. And this was 2015, and he was saying that some futurists and scientists at that point thought it could happen by 2020, in the next 5 years, almost kind of more than probable in the next 10 years. And we've got 10 years down the line, and it's not here yet. But a lot of the people, the experts, scientists, etc., do seem to think that it is coming, and kind of sooner than we might like. Mark Zuckerberg last week talked about something called personal superintelligence, where he was describing like having an AI glasses that would be kind of personalized companions that would, his quotes, create what you want to see in the world, experience any adventure, be a better friend to those you care about, and grow to become the person you aspire to be. Which is big words for Mark Zuckerberg, obviously. I wonder what kind of person he'd aspire to be. But I was very scared in 2015 when I read that. and it's not come through. But we have seen massive developments, and I think the way in which ChatGPT has infiltrated all of our lives across the board in quite a short space of time does suggest that, I mean, this stuff is kind of exponential. You know, it's not a gradual increase. At some point, AI will develop quicker and quicker and quicker. So it will have repercussions for all our lives.
And when we talk about ChatGPT, like ChatGPT, when it was launched, there's a benchmark that somebody has designed that to compare human and machine intelligence. ChatGPT scored 5%, and OpenAI's O3 chatbot, which launched in April, which thinks before it generates answers. So it produces these long, like, chain of thought reasoning before responding. It scored 75%. So that's just in the space of a couple of years. We've gone from ChatGPT scoring 5% to O3 scoring 75.5%. There are signs that this is rapidly accelerating.
And at the same time, you know, the clip that we heard at the top of this segment was all about the potential doom, which we've, you know, obviously heard before about what AI may bring us in the future. But, Felicity, there could be good things for humans, maybe not necessarily in the way that Mark Zuckerberg paints, but could this be like the Industrial Revolution? You know, there's this idea that AI could actually have a benefit in helping us to do less work.
Fingers crossed for that. Yes, I hope so. I mean, my feeling with AI is that the genie is out of the bag. Like, it's here, and the speed at which it's developing and progressing is terrifying, but it's here and there's no going back. So I think we need to do as much as we can to make sure that it's a benign and benevolent force for all our lives. I mean, I slightly went down a kind of doom aspect because I was looking into data centers, and I keep on seeing headlines about data centers being built up, which is so bad for the planet in terms of how much energy they require. And they're also, I hadn't realized, but they're really water intensive. They need lots of water in order to prevent computers from overheating. And in this country, that's, you know, a massive problem because we have a water scarcity and like really bleak warnings about, you know, huge water shortages, and also just like awful stories about these huge data centers being built on like green belt around London and in countrysides and all that sort of thing. And so I was like, oh God, doom, doom, doom. But then it does seem that AI potentially could help the climate. I was reading that it could help against global heating by making power grids work more efficiently, accelerating the development of new zero carbon technologies. I mean, I don't know whether these things are like a smokescreen that AI proponents will say, oh, there are loads of great things that come with this just so that they can keep on doing as much as they want to do. I don't know, but and it might be a failure of imagination, but hopefully people with better imaginations than I have can foresee a world where AI is going to, you know, make the world a better place. Otherwise, you know, we don't really want it, right?
I think on the other hand as well, like with the data centers, what people always forget when we talk about AI is that they forget that this kind of nebulous, ephemeral thing that they think exists in the cloud actually is underpinned by physical infrastructure that has real world consequences. We're already seeing the real world consequences of the rollout of AI. It's already been responsible for tens of thousands of job losses. At the moment, there's relatively stable, low unemployment and kind of steady wage growth, but there are signs that companies are beginning to adopt AI in a way that doesn't actually mean that people are working less. It means that fewer people are working. And all the way through human history, these technological advancements that are touted as more efficient, time-saving, better for humanity actually end up exacerbating wealth and inequality divides because they always negatively impact those who are at the poorest end of the scale the most. In this case, AI looks to be more threatening white collar jobs like, for example, journalists, historians, sales reps, writers, computer and tech support, that kind of thing. They are all the jobs that are under threat. But there is perhaps another argument. So Jess Hollinger, who's one of our podcast contributors, she shared an article today on her Instagram, a New York Times article, talking about how there is this kind of pushback in some American universities, and people are starting to see a an uptick in students opting for the humanities, with the kind of in their mind being like, well, why would I go and do like tech or computer or any of these other studies which may or may not be replaced by an AI bot, when I could instead pursue the arts and pursue literature and music and the kinds of areas in which AI will probably not come to replace humanity. So I think that's a nice, slightly more positive angle.
Jamie, presupposing this more rosy picture Harriet has put forward does come to pass, and the AI machines that are coming don't just make us all completely obsolete, but rather take on a few of our jobs and free up some time, what daily tasks would you be happy to hand over of your day-to-day life?
Great question, Aaron. I do like the idea that we'll be able to look back on the AI and be like, ooh, at least it made the trains run on time. The things that I really dislike having to do is anything kind of like clearing out when you make coffee and then you have to get rid of the coffee granules. That's a real faff. I know that there's the bean to cup thing, and I don't really understand it, to be honest. But basically, I just want someone to come and get rid of the coffee granules so I can make coffee whenever I want. That's all I want from AI, Arian. If you can bring that to my life,
I'll get happy. Straight onto that. Felicity, how about you?
Like an AI babysitter, someone to look after my kids for free.
Good one. Yeah, Harriet.
I've got to say, I think it's got to be something that can cook my meals, like an AI housekeeper. I want something to cook and clean for me. Just a sort of robot that just does all of that, housework and cooking.
We basically want robotic slaves. That's in fact that's the problem is we're going to be slaves to the robots if we are to believe the more dire end of the prediction spectrum. But that's all we have time for today before our new AGI overlords reassign us to the content mines forever. My thanks to Harriet, Jamie and Felicity. And you can follow this show for free and get every episode as soon as it's released by searching for The Week Unwrapped wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, where you can watch us now too. And you can also get 6 free issues of The Week magazine with a trial subscription. Just go to theweek.com/subscriptions. In the meantime, I've been Arian McNichol. Our music is by Tom Morby, the producer Olly Peart at Rethink Audio. And until we meet again to unwrap next week, bye-bye.